The shocking truth about Apostle Paul's journey, the dark secrets they never told you, in a dusty corner of the ancient world, where whispers of truth wove themselves into the very stones of forgotten cities, a tale lurked waiting to ensnare the curious, the brave, and the bold. How could one man, once an impenetrable enemy of the followers of the enigmatic prophet Jesus, transform overnight into a fervent believer, spinning the globe with his electrifying journeys? The shocking truth is bursting at the seams, threatening to unravel a fabric woven with hidden intentions. Picture this: the sun beating down on a narrow road, the scent of dust and sweat mingling with an unseen tension in the air. It's here that Paul lay, blinded and shaken, as a burning light eclipsed the brightness of the day. This was no ordinary moment, it reeked of divine madness. People around him proclaimed this miraculous event as a turning point, but what lay beneath that radiant surface? Ancient texts speak of a prophecy, an omen, but only in hushed tones. The real question is, was Paul really chosen, or was he merely a pawn in a game far larger than any of them could fathom? As whispers turned into shouts, the followers of Christ gathered, eyes filled with wonder and fear. Each glance shot across the room felt electric, charged with questions that hung heavily in the air. What drove Paul? Was it a sincere vision or an obsession craving power? And what of those who opposed him? Their looks were filled with contempt, the kind of silent fury that echoed louder than any word could. The streets buzzed with gossip, tales steeped in shadows and secrets. Some claimed Paul wielded a dark past that bled into his present, yet no one dared to speak too loudly. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. What was behind Paul's infamous journey? Each step he took seemed to lead deeper into danger, not only from the authorities but from forces shadows still lurking in the dark. The tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. Would he outsmart them, or was he already sealed in a fate far more tragic than he imagined? Every second felt crucial. An unthinkable twist hovered just out of sight. As he prepared for yet another perilous mission, one question lingered in the air: who was the real Paul, and what secrets lay buried in the heart of his tumultuous journey? If there was one thing Paul knew, it was that his life had spiraled into chaos the moment that blinding light had engulfed him. As he rose to his feet, shaky but determined, he could feel it deep in his bones. Something sinister lurked just beyond the edges of his newly found faith. The fervor with which others embraced him felt more like smoke than warmth. It was an illusion ripe for the taking, crackling with uncertainty. Day by day, whispers around him intensified, thickening the air with suspicion. Did the followers of Jesus see him as a vessel for change or as a pretty much ticking time bomb? He felt their anxious glances, their hushed conversations that seemed to float around him like a heavy fog. Friendship and camaraderie weren't in abundance. They felt like a barricade against the looming shadows of doubt that he would make his mark, no matter the cost. Paul gathered a few like-minded souls: the fearless, the brave, those who wanted to believe in something greater than themselves. They met in covert corners of the city, away from watchful eyes. Intentional, the word echoed in his mind. He had to be intentional about every step he took if he wished to evade the attention his past once demanded. Yet, with each gathering, a nagging worry clawed at his insides. He recalled scornful faces from his past, the angry men who had once terrified him. They were not mere memories, they simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. Paul knew he had crossed a dangerous line. Those men were out for blood, and he had become their target. They were hunting him. News of his renewed zeal spread quicker than wildfire. Old associates whispered back to the very same men Paul had once served alongside. A price was placed on his head, while his followers continued to sing his praises, blissfully unaware of the threat painting itself in vivid colors around them. Were they foolish? Or could they see something in him that he himself was struggling to grasp? The invisible tension between them grew with each passing day. A shared realization of impending doom hung heavy in the air. The sun sank, casting long shadows over the buildings as Paul paced nervously before his eager companions, their faces gleaming with hope. "I can't keep running, nor do I want to hide," he proclaimed, voice trembling yet resolute. "This faith is a fire that ignites my spirit. But I must confront my past. I need to face those who want me dead." Gasps erupted from the group. "You can't," one woman cried, her voice heavy with desperation. "You'll be walking straight into a trap." But he remained undeterred, steadying his gaze on the flickering flames of their makeshift campfire. "It is not just my life at stake. It is a bigger picture than any of us can imagine." They cannot silence the truth. Before he could finish, the sound of commotion shattered the gloom. Heavy footsteps drew closer, echoing through the narrow streets. Panic flared in the eyes of his companions as Paul's breath caught in his throat. Suddenly, the shadows materialized, figures cloaked in darkness, intent on revenge. In that moment, every heartbeat pounded in his ears. The ultimate showdown teetered on the brink. Would Paul's transformation lead to redemption, or was it a trap laid by a sinister force determined to end him once and for all? Just as he prepared to face the onrushing tide, an unexpected figure emerged from within the shadows. A familiar voice called out, "Paul! It's not too late." Who was this mysterious rescuer, and what did they know about Paul's past that could change everything? The air crackled with tension, and in an instant, the very fabric of fate trembled. The figure stepped into the flickering light, revealing a face Paul recognized all too well: Rachel. His heart lurched. Her eyes, usually filled with warmth, were now shadowed by worry, and her breath came in quick bursts. Could she truly help him escape this nightmare? "Get back!" one of the cloaked figures shouted, taking a step closer, dark intentions radiating from him like waves of heat. "Wait!" Rachel pleaded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Let me speak to him. He's not what you think." Paul's mind raced. Why had she come here? He had made it clear that he was buried in his new mission and that old ties could drag him down. "Rachel! What are you doing?" he hissed, desperation creeping into his words. "Your followers are in danger, Paul. They can't see the truth. You're not just a target, you're bait," she said, urgency clawing at her throat. "You need to." Before she could finish, the first man lunged forward, fists balled. "You've betrayed us, Paul. You think they'll keep you safe? You'll be the first one struck down." Everything froze, the world narrowing to the sharpness of a dagger. The growling tension thickened, and time seemed to stretch as Paul contemplated his options. Would he stand and fight for his newfound faith, or would he protect the one person who knew him inside out? "Rachel, get out of here!" he shouted, but she stood firm, a shield against the explosive chaos threatening to envelop them. "No!" she insisted, raising her chin defiantly. "You can't do this alone. Not this time." A bead of sweat trickled down Paul's back as uncertainty flooded through him. Those who had once followed him in fear now eyed him with betrayal and fury. He was a man split down the middle. Could he hold on to the hope of faith while facing the shattered remnants of his past? At that moment, the group watching began to shift uneasily, caught between the weight of their loyalty to Paul and the boiling animosity surging from the shadows. "What are you waiting for?" one of his followers muttered, glancing fearfully at the encroaching danger. The first man moved again, seizing the opportunity. "You've made your choice, Paul. You've chosen the wrong side." The looming fight ignited a primal fear within the crowd, a palpable sense of betrayal that crackled through the air like electricity. Just as fists were about to fly, the ground beneath them trembled. There was a rumble, louder than the chaos around them. "What was that?" Rachel whispered, eyes wide. The shadows froze, and for a split second, the air thickened with uncertainty. Paul turned just in time to see the source of the noise: a shimmer, a flicker of light bouncing against the stone walls. He squinted against the brightness, a pulse of hope igniting deep within, but then, another shadow emerged, larger than the others. It filled the alleyway, a gargantuan figure stepping through, eyes locked on Paul. Panic gripped his heart as he tried to process who or what that could possibly be, what force had arrived to change the odds. Was it a friend or foe? The atmosphere shifted, tension spiking, and an unexpected jolt of uncertainty coursed through everyone, as if they were collectively holding their breath. But before any question could spill from Paul's lips, the ground shook again, and the figure pointed directly at him. "You," it boomed, voice echoing with authority that commanded respect. "You've been chosen." What did that mean? And more importantly, what were they being chosen for? The stakes had just drastically risen, and as the shadows stretched longer and the light pulsated brighter, Paul felt the tug of destiny draw nearer. The booming voice hung heavy in the air, a mix of dread and curiosity swirling within the crowd. Paul squinted at the colossal figure, his heart hammering. The light flickered, casting eerie patterns as he tried to make sense of this new threat or ally. The figure's eyes, cold yet piercing with intensity, seemed to drill into him, as if searching for something hidden deep within. The cloaked men hesitated, exchanging confused glances, their aggression suddenly muted by the overpowering presence now looming before them. "Chosen?" Paul murmured to himself, his voice barely a whisper. The word echoed oddly in his mind, setting off alarm bells. "Who are you?" Paul finally managed, though his voice trembled as he spoke. Fear coiled tightly around his gut, battling with a flicker of defiance. Rachel remained close, eyes darting between him and the new figure, her breath hitching in expectation. "I am Abraxas," the figure proclaimed, stepping forward with deliberate slowness. His silhouette stirred a palpable tension as he glanced at the cloaked men. "You obey their false prophets, blinded by fear. Paul has found the light beyond your shadows." The disdain in his tone stuck to the air like tar, turning the hesitation among the crowd into uncertainty. The cloaked leader barked a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "And what light is that? You think you can save him? He's been tainted. Just like his past. You're wasting your time enough." Abraxas thundered, an authority that turned the air electric. "The time for feeble allegiances has passed. Paul, you've been marked by forces greater than you or this rabble." He narrowed his gaze, fixing it solely on Paul. "To step into your purpose, you must shed your fear." Fear twisted within Paul, but the urgency of the moment pushed him forward. "What do you know?" he demanded, tapping into his fading resolve. "What purpose are you talking about?" "You are the key, Paul. The embodiment of truth they fear," Abraxas declared, his voice filled with gravitas. "A battle brews not just within this city but across all realms. They need a figure to rally behind, and that figure is you. But first, you must face the shadows of your own making." Rachel stepped closer. "You can't mean," her voice shook, clinging to hope and doubt in equal measure. "Paul, you can't be the one." "I had hoped." Paul turned to her, catching the tremor in her tone. "Hoped for what?" It hit him, a pang of vulnerability that dug deep. "I've changed, Rachel. I've tried to leave it all behind. What's done in darkness will come to light," Abraxas interrupted, his gaze sharp. "The choices you make now will shape your fate and that of your followers. Will you embrace the truth or remain in the shadows?" The men in cloaks shifted uneasily, glancing among themselves. Whispers erupted like firecrackers. The very air crackled with electricity as loyalties strained against the rising tide of transformation. Before Paul could respond, a loud crash erupted from the alley's mouth, sending a shockwave through the crowd. The ground rumbled again, this time more violently, as debris scattered. Panic flared in the eyes surrounding him. Faces once filled with conviction now showed terror. "Time is running out," Abraxas shouted over the din, eyes blazing. "You must decide, Paul. Will you stand and fight for the truth, or will you let it slip away?" Paul's heart raced, the weight of destiny pressing down upon him. The roiling chaos around him felt like a storm ready to break. He looked at Rachel, then back at the swirling shadows, realizing that every choice, every breath could lead to freedom or disaster. "Choose now!" roared Abraxas, the urgency palpable. Paul caught the flicker in his companion's eyes. Was it fear, hope, or perhaps something more? As the shadows closed in again, Paul's voice broke free, heavy with the burden of his decision. I will choose." But his words hung in the air like a promise made too soon, and the moment he held onto so tightly began to slip away. The question loomed, was he willing to confront the darkness within and without? Suddenly, the ground lurched again, challenging his resolve, and a blinding light flashed before him, momentarily disorienting everyone. Was this the truth calling, or was it the final trap of the shadows? What would he find when the light faded? And would he still be standing, ready to face what was next? The radiance engulfed them all, a searing light that obliterated the boundaries of shadow and reality. It felt alive, a pulsating heartbeat that resonated through the crowd as they shielded their eyes. Paul squinted, the blurriness revealing a whirlwind of colors dancing like ghosts, spinning faster until everything collapsed into a haze. Then, silence fell. The crowd was still, breaths caught in throats, fear lingering like smoke. When the light receded, Paul slowly opened his eyes to a transformed scene. The familiar alleyway lay stretched before him, but it was distorted. Figures of the cloaked men were bathed in a spectral glow, their expressions twisted between awe and fury. And then he saw it. Standing beside Abraxas was another figure. Tall and elegant with delicate features, the woman's long hair shimmered like threads of gold, and her eyes sparkled with a warmth that pushed against the chill creeping into Paul's bones. "Welcome," she said, her voice a soothing balm amidst the tension. "I am Lygia, and I'm here to guide you." What just happened?" Paul stammered, feeling the weight of the moment press on his chest. "You were meant to confront your fears," Lygia said, stepping closer until the gaps in the crowd began to close. "But it wasn't only about you. The fate of the world hinges on this moment. Abraxas saw the light within you. It was time to awaken the truth." "Truth," Paul echoed, still grasping for coherence. "What truth?" Rachel, sensing his turmoil, edged nearer, her fingertips brushing the rough fabric of his coat. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Paul, what did you see?" "Everything and nothing," he replied, his voice cracking. "I felt something deep. It's like a door opened in God, I don't know. There's so much noise in my head." The cloaked figures shifted cautiously, their leader sneering. "Fools! Do you really believe a light would save you? It will only expose the rot you carry. You think you're chosen? Look at your past." Abraxas stepped forward, unblinking. "The darkness you cling to doesn't define you, Paul. It's the choices you make now that will rewrite your future." Paul's heart thundered as revelations swirled like a tempest. He thought of his past misdeeds, the shadows that clung to him. They haunted his every step, reminding him he could never be free. But maybe the light offered redemption, a chance to confront and reframe that darkness, not drown in it. A sudden movement caught his attention. A thin crack echoed through the alley like a gunshot. A fissure tore open in the ground near the cloaked men, a dark void swelling, seeping forth tendrils of shadow that writhed like snakes. The crowd gasped, eyes wide with fear, uncertainty spiraling into panic. "Paul! Focus!" Rachel shouted, the urgency thick in the air. "You have to choose." The shadows moved, advancing toward them like hungry beasts. Paul looked into the eyes of the cloaked leader, steady yet shaken, filled with contempt he knew he couldn't ignore. Looking back at Rachel, he saw her determination. It bolstered him, fueled the fire inside. "Together, we can fight this," Paul said, the words surging from deep within. "No more hiding. No more fear. Then stand as one." Abraxas thundered, raising his arms. "The time for doubt has passed. Embrace your truth." As they prepared to face the encroaching darkness, something shifted in the air. Power crackled, resonating through Paul like a call to arms. It filled his lungs, electrifying him. But just as he reached for that power, the shadows surged forward in a forceful wave, threatening to sweep them all under, and all he could think was how much he had to lose the moment. The choice, Rachel, would the truth be strong enough to conquer the shadows, or would everything he held dear be swallowed whole? The ground quaked beneath them, and as the darkness roared to life, Paul was left gasping, wondering if the truth he sought could withstand the storm gathering around him. Had he truly embraced his fate, or was this just the beginning of a horrifying descent? The shadows lunged, swallowing sound and light, filling the alley with a suffocating darkness. Paul's heart raced, the primal instinct to flee wrestling with the powerful urge to stand his ground. Rachel's grip tightened on his arm, her pulse almost as frantic as his own. "Don't look away," she shouted, her voice barely above the din of chaos threatening to engulf them. "Hold on to the light." His eyes darted around, searching for that glimmer of hope in the shadows' swirling threats. And then, amidst the encroaching void, he saw it, a spark, a flicker deep within himself. It was the truth that Lygia had promised, the burning truth that resonated with every breath in his body, that he could feel the energy pooling inside him, a radiant potential waiting to be unleashed. But doubt crept in again. What if it wasn't enough? What if he failed? Just as the shadows surged forth, seeking to drench them in despair, Paul caught Lygia's gaze. She nodded, her eyes encouraging, grounding him. "Now!" Abraxas urged, his arms outstretched as if to contain the impending doom. The cloaked figures stood firm yet shaken, their confidence waning as the shadows slithered closer. Paul drew a deep breath, envisioning every single moment of pain from his past, the regrets, the failures. But this was different. He wasn't just reliving his darkness, he was embracing it, owning it. Each painful memory transformed no longer chains but the very essence of his strength. "Together!" Paul shouted, his voice a battle cry. "We fight for more than ourselves, we stand for everyone lost in the dark." And then, without hesitation, he thrust his hands forward, channeling every ounce of energy into a blinding light that burst forth. It erupted from him in waves, illuminating the alley, casting the shadows back. The darkness recoiled, wriggling and hissing like a wounded beast, fear etching itself into the cloaked men's features, but the shadows were relentless, flooding in again with even more fury. The light flickered, the pressure mounting like a vice against his chest. The crowd behind him trembled, whispers of doubt pulsing through the air, morphing into an incessant roar of panic. "Paul! Focus on the truth!" Rachel cried again, her eyes wide, fear etched across her beautiful face. "What is true will save us." He realized then his light wasn't just about him, it was the collective power within the crowd. Everyone had their shadows to overcome. Pulling from their fear, their pain, he reached out, inviting their strength to amplify his own. "Join me!" he bellowed. "Everyone, focus on your light." And suddenly, the alley shimmered with an array of colors, a tapestry woven from the courage of each soul present. Paul marveled at the energy as the crowd poured their hope into the growing brightness, igniting the darkness around them. The cloaked men reeled, their twisted forms reflecting the struggle they created. Paul saw their fear and doubt, the raw truth of who they were, laid bare. As the darkness lost its grip, a realization struck him. They weren't his enemies, they were mirrors of his own struggles, but the shadows surged once more aggressive, more hungry. This time, he felt the pressure, an overwhelming weight that threatened to crush him. The energy around them flickered, the combined light wavering under the relentless assault. "Stay strong. We can't falter," Paul shouted, trying to keep the bond alive even as exhaustion crept in. The shadows grew bolder, clawing at the edges of their light with dark tendrils, reaching for their fears, their weaknesses. Paul could see it, they were trying to break them apart. The connection was fraying, that he felt a tight knot in his throat as the shadows clawed closer to Rachel, threatening to pull her into the abyss. "No!" He screamed, desperation surging through him. He couldn't let them take her. As light and dark battled, Paul's heart raced. Was this the final stand? Did he have enough strength left? The question loomed. The moment was at hand. As the shadows lunged once again, a horrific scream echoed, drowning out the clash of light and dark. In that instant, he thought, would he lose everything for the truth? And then it happened. The shadows began to shift, forming an ominous shape at the heart of the darkness. Paul's breath caught in his throat as the figures twisted, unveiling a truth far beyond what he ever imagined. What emerged from the void was not just darkness but a revelation he never expected. Scrambling for answers, Paul fought against the encroaching shadows as realization struck him. This was only the beginning. What was the truth hiding within the chaos? How deep did the shadows run? As the darkness twisted and roiled before him, Paul felt a chill that swept through the alley, carrying with it the whispers of despair. The shimmering light they had built together flickered, a gust of anxiety threatening to extinguish it completely. It was a battle of wills, and deep inside, a sense of foreboding brewed, a consciousness that this wasn't just an encounter, it was a confrontation with something primal, something deeply embedded in every shadow. The forms twisted further, their shapes amorphous and monstrous, claw-like figures reaching for Paul, grasping at his very essence. A golden light pulsed from him, fueled by the collective courage of the crowd, but even that wasn't enough against the impending onslaught. His gaze flickered to Rachel. Fear etched on her face, her trembling hands reached for him amid the chaos. "Paul!" she cried, voice crackling, "we need to finish this together." He nodded, but doubt clouded his mind. What if they were wrong about the light? What if it was leading them directly into darkness? The question hung heavy in the air as the shadows intensified their assault. The cloaked figures surged, their whispers crescendoing into a cacophony of anguish, overwhelming Paul and the spirits of the crowd. Just then, from the depths of the shadows, a voice emerged, deep and resonant. "You don't know what you're fighting against, boy. The truth you cling to is a fragile illusion." It sent shivers down Paul's spine. Was this the voice of the darkness? Was it speaking to him, trying to break his resolve? The figures solidified, forming a grotesque tableau, every face twisted in agony. Each visage seemed a shard of a lost memory, echoing a lifetime of regret and pain, a mirror reflecting every fear he had ever known. The energy constricted, suffocating, forcing Paul to confront what he loathed the most: his past mistakes, the countless moments he had let fear dictate his choices. Abruptly, a vision emerged before him: his younger self, sitting alone, shunned by others. The laughter around him turned to echoes of mockery, swelling until he could hardly breathe. "You're not worth it." A voice sneered from the shadows, sharp and cutting. "No!" Paul shouted, face contorting with anguish. "You're wrong." He remembered Lygia's words, "The shadows are born from our fears." From within the frantic crowd, he felt a shift. The light pulsed stronger for a moment as people began to step forward, raising their hands, driven by a fervent need to fight back. He could see the hope dawning in their eyes. "Feel it," he encouraged, his voice rising above the turmoil. "Embrace your truths." One by one, individuals began to join the light, their fears transforming into beams of illumination, pushing back the gnarled claws of darkness. A vibrant aura surrounded them, colors merging and swirling, a tapestry of shared strength. Rachel's eyes lit up, despair giving way to determination, an anchor in the storm. But as the bonds began to weave an unbreakable chain, the deep voice rang out again. "Are you truly ready for the truth? Or are you just searching for an escape?" His heart raced. What kind of truth? Paul shuddered, the shadows whispering secrets meant to tear them down, revealing the horrors that hid behind smiles and hidden within the hearts of the crowd. They were not mere spectators, they were part of this madness. Was there something darker buried in their shared pasts? As the shadows reached their peak, forming a monstrous beast that towered over the scene, Paul understood the fight was only just beginning. The ground beneath them trembled as the beast howled, a sound that cracked the very air. Paul felt the fear, the weight pressing in. "Face it," he urged, feeling a surge of defiance rise within him. And just as he opened up his heart to all they had to fight against, the shadows lunged again. Paul's breath caught. Was the truth about to be unveiled, or would this be the final assault? Just then, a flash of light erupted from the heart of the beast, illuminating the shadow's depths momentarily. What was hiding behind that blinding light? And what would they all discover about themselves in the process? The blinding light exploded outward, scattering the shadows like leaves caught in a violent wind. A hush fell over the crowd, the cacophony of whispers replaced by a stunned silence that hung heavy in the air. Paul squinted into the brightness, desperately trying to decipher what lay at its core. Anxiety coiled around his heart, each beat thundered in his ears. "Stay with me." Rachel's voice broke through, grounding him. He met her gaze. Her determination fueled him, igniting a spark within. But even as hope flickered, an inkling of dread gnawed at his spirit. From the light emerged figures. Familiar faces twisted together, mingling with the grotesque remains of the shadowy monsters. Paul's gut twisted in recognition. They were the faces he had tried to forget, the people he had hurt, turned away. Friends who had become strangers like pages torn from a cherished book, and they all wore expressions of anguish. "What is this?" Paul screamed, his voice barely rising above the oppressive heaviness surrounding them. "What do you want from me?" The light pulsed again, revealing the essence of each figure. They were tethered to him not as enemies, but as reflections of his own failures and regrets. Every unkind word, every moment of apathy, coalesced into a haunting tableau that threatened to swallow him whole. "You think you can just move on?" A voice broke through, steady and unyielding. "You left us behind." "No. It couldn't be." It was Kyle, a childhood friend. Betrayal and a sharp pang of guilt knifed through Paul. The echoes of laughter and camaraderie rippled out, memories layered with regret. "No!" Paul shouted, a mix of anger and desperation. I couldn't what?" Kyle stepped forward, his eyes ablaze with pain. "Face the truth. Own your choices. You claim to fight for everyone, but what about those you abandoned?" The ground shook violently, causing the crowd to stagger. The monstrous beast loomed closer, absorbing the energy of Paul's fear, thriving on the guilt and pain. As the shadows clawed inward, Paul felt the power of the crowd dim with each accusation hurled at him. "Help us, Paul!" Rachel shouted. "Don't let them take away your light." Her words rallied him. Paul gritted his teeth, trying to overpower the crushing weight of the shadows. It was time to confront the truth, the ugly, raw essence of his past choices and regrets. Taking a deep breath, he felt the warmth from the collective energy of the hopes around him. "I was afraid," Paul finally admitted, his voice trembling. "Afraid I wasn't enough, that facing my past would break me. But hiding only made it worse. I need to reclaim my truth, face it head on." The beast howled in rage, but as he spoke, the power of shared truths surged. The figures around him shifted, forming a protective ring. Each person in the crowd began to resonate their own fears, their own shadows, illuminating the dark corners of their shared histories. "I'm sorry, Kyle. I'm sorry," Paul cried out. "We were kids. I ran when I should have stayed." Kyle's expression softened, a glimmer of understanding flashing across his features. The surrounding figures began to glow, trapped pain transforming into vibrant light that draped over them like golden armor. As the beast lunged, claws outstretched, Paul and the crowd braced themselves. But the luminous shield held firm, solidifying their resolve. They were not just fighting shadows or their pasts, they were embracing all the pieces of themselves, the light woven into their shared darkness. Just as it seemed they had gained ground, the shadows twisted and writhed, forming into a swirling vortex. "You think this is victory?" The deep voice returned, escalating into a terrifying roar. You will see your worst. With a blinding flash, the beast plunged into the heart of their defenses, and Paul felt an overwhelming surge of panic. What would they face now? Would their darkest secrets be exposed? And could they survive the truth of what waited behind the light? The moment the beast broke through the shimmering shield, chaos erupted. Shadows twisted like serpents, lunging at the crowd, seeking cracks in their newfound resolve. Panic surged through Paul, fear hovered like a fog, suffocating and oppressive. He couldn't breathe. "Hold on!" Rachel shouted, her voice cutting through the din. She stepped forward, gripping Paul's arm with a fierce intensity. "We're stronger together. Trust each other." But just as those words hung in the air, more figures emerged from the vortex, their features shifting and morphing. These weren't familiar faces, but distortions of fear itself. They were shadowy versions of Paul. "Is this who you really are?" A distorted version of himself growled, eyes empty and vacant. "A coward hiding from the truth? You never change." The crowd faltered, their faith wavering. A gut-wrenching reality gripped Paul. This monster was not just pulling chains from vanquished faces, it was conjuring up his own doubts and insecurities. "No!" Paul yelled, shaking his head violently. "You're not real." But the vision, like a relentless tide, pushed forward. "I am everything you feared. Every decision you avoided. The past you thought you could outrun." Desperation flooded through him. Memories he buried rushed to the surface, moments of failure, betrayal, and loneliness. All the times he didn't fight back when it mattered, all the times he let fear dictate his choices. Each memory felt like a dagger, piercing his resolve. "Do you want to know your greatest regret?" The figure hissed. "How much easier it is to abandon your dreams and your people." "Shut up!" Paul roared, shaking his head again, trying to drown out the noise, but the crowd was quiet now, eyes filled with uncertainty. The shadows were preying on their collective fears. Paul felt their energy drain, and with it, his own hope flickered like a faulty light bulb. Rachel's grip tightened ever more. "Remember, Paul. We're here for each other." That single reminder sparked something deep inside. The warmth grew, igniting a fire. He turned back to the throng of tortured faces. They weren't victims, they were warriors. They had braved their fears in ways he hadn't yet done. Suddenly, Paul understood. "We are not just our shadows," he cried, raising his voice above the howling darkness. "We are our experiences. We grow and learn from every moment. Even in pain, we find strength." The words charged through the crowd, carrying spirit like a rushing wind. They regained their footing, watching as light began to seep from within them, illuminating the darkest corners of their souls. Each person stepped forward, one by one, pushing back the looming creature with their own truths. Together, they began to forge a wall of light that surrounded Paul, radiating courage. The shadows shrieked in fury, recoiling. "Together!" Paul shouted, raising his hands in unison with Rachel. "Let us show them who we truly are." But the creature recoiled, its massive form thrumming with anger, twisting violently as if caught in an electric storm. "This isn't over," it roared. "You will pay for every moment of doubt." And just as the vortex of shadows cracked, a blinding light erupted, enveloping the crowd. Paul could barely see, the brightness consuming all, but through the blinding haze, a chilling whisper floated into his conscience. "Are you prepared for the price of your courage?" The light swelled, and Paul felt the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on him. What transformations awaited them if they chose this path? Would they emerge whole, or was something darker brewing just beneath the surface? As the brightness engulfed them completely, chilling uncertainty gripped Paul anew. What awaited them on the other side? As the light pulsed and swallowed everything, Paul felt the boundaries of reality blur. The rush of warmth and energy enveloped him, making him feel both invincible and vulnerable. Would they emerge into safety, or would they step into an abyss beyond comprehension? The blinding glow began to dim, revealing a vast expanse, a serene landscape that felt almost surreal. Soft, green hills rolled beneath a sky painted with colors never before seen. The shadows had receded, but uncertainty loomed. The figure of Abraxas stood beside him and Rachel, a look of deep contemplation in his austere gaze. "Welcome to the heart of truth," Abraxas announced, his voice steady, soothing even. "You made it through the storm, but now begins the reckoning of your realities." Paul's heart raced, awareness surging as his companions emerged behind him, each one trembling yet curious about this newfound place. This is what we fought for?" he whispered, awe mingled with fear vibrating through each word. Rachel squeezed his hand, grounding him. "Maybe it's what we've been fighting against all along." Fear flared within Paul, yet there was warmth here, too. A flicker of hope. As the crowd spread out, their eyes glimmering with confusion and wonder, Lygia joined them. "Here, in this space, your shadows will confront you not as enemies, but as parts of who you are. Accept their truths, and healing will follow." Paul's breath caught. What if we don't want to face them? What if the shadows are too strong? The air shimmered with brilliance. To grow, you must acknowledge your past. It does not define you, but it shapes you. Embrace it. Fear gripped him like a tightening coil, but he felt the warmth of solidarity ripple through his supporters. They weren't alone in this. Each one held a piece of the whole, a shared narrative that forged their unity. "Remember who you are," Abraxas continued. "Not just the man who sought redemption, but the community that stands beside you. Together you can rewrite this story." His voice echoed across the vibrant landscape, connecting with something deep inside Paul. Suddenly, the ground around them trembled, and shadowy figures began to emerge, echoes of past mistakes and lives once entwined with Paul's. Each figure wore the faces of people he had let down, moments replaying in raw succession. There was Kyle, but also others. Friends, family, even foes. The masses of memories writhed like phantoms, beckoning him to dive into their depths. Each face carried its own story, its own pain. "You abandoned us. You left us behind, Paul," they whispered, their voices overlapping, a haunting chorus. Paul shivered at the familiarity of those words, each syllable striking chords of guilt within him. "You were supposed to be our friend." One voice cut through the haze, anger flaring in its tone. Paul felt the heat of their anger until it engulfed him, but then, a spark ignited within him. He took a step forward. "I'm sorry," he shouted, voice resonating with unyielding power. "I ran when I was afraid to face the truth of myself. But I'm here now. I see you." Each shadow paused, surveying him with narrowed eyes as if gauging the sincerity of his plea. "The choices I made hurt you, and carrying that weight has taught me strength. I mourn the time lost, but I won turn from you again. I'm reclaiming my truth." The ground rumbled, sending ripples through the field before him. Slowly, the figures began to dissolve, their forms softening until they radiated light instead of darkness. They shifted from anger to understanding, and he felt the energy transform, pouring warmth back into his heart. Rachel stepped forward, her voice intertwining with his. "We are not just our shadows, we are the love we gave, the trust we built, and the dreams we share. Stand with us, we're stronger together." Paul's heart soared. There was magic in their unity, a power that coursed through them. One by one, the crowd began to step forward, their voices melding into a symphony of acceptance. "Yes," they declared, a wave of resolution washing over the expanse. "We are not just our past. We are our future." With every confession, shadows dissolved against the backdrop of their illuminating truths. The memories no longer hurt, they became stepping stones toward renewal. The weight of guilt transformed into gratitude for lessons learned. The luminosity swirled, vibrant colors merging in magnificent patterns. A beautiful harmony surrounded them, uplifting, invigorating. No longer bound by guilt or shame, Paul felt lighter than air. As they stood hand in hand, united by shared struggles and triumphs, an overwhelming sense of empowerment coursed through him. "This is not just my journey," he spoke aloud. "It's ours." "Absolutely," Abraxas nodded, eyes gleaming. "From this moment forward, you are the light that breaks the shadows. Remember the truth, educate others, and lead with compassion." Paul turned to Rachel, her smile radiant. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, voice thick with emotion. Together, they faced the horizon, ready to embrace the world that awaited them. "It's time to share our truth," Paul declared boldly. "No one needs to walk alone in darkness anymore." As he looked across the glowing landscape, he felt a sense of closure and an energetic spark of new beginnings. Behind him, the crowd erupted in a chorus of acceptance. Their journey was not merely a survival, it was a revolution heralding change, understanding, and the undeniable power of unity against the shadows. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You won't regret it.